Hey, welcome back to the Healthy Living Scottsdale podcast. I'm your host, Coach Zach. I'm here with Coach Caden and Coach Brandy. And today we are talking about testosterone and TRT, which is going to be very interesting. But before we do that, we want to give a little shout out to a client of the week, which we always do. And this week, we want to give a shout out to Chris Camberis, who doesn't strike me as the type of guy that listens to our podcast. So maybe telling him he's the client of the week will get him to. But Chris is just like all around good guy. He's a seasonal member, and he's just like the type of person that you want as a client for your business, because he just like pops into town and he's like, hey, I'm in town. I want to come back, charge my card. I'll be there next week, and just like shows up and he's here doing his own thing. Well, I mean, we're training him, but he's just like very self-directed and comes in, works out for a couple of months, and then is gone again. But it's always super enjoyable having him here. And he's a talker. He likes to chit chat with everybody, which is great. We love it because it's just like good for the environment. So, Chris, I appreciate you, and you're just an awesome dude, awesome client. Thank you for being here. So I don't know if you have anything you want to say, Caden, but Brandy doesn't really work with him all that much because he comes in the mornings. So.
No, I love working with you, Chris, man. Keep showing up and doing your thing. See you soon.
We got to fix that mic, Caden. You're just like so far away from you. All right, guys, testosterone. So it's one of those, testosterone's an interesting topic because I feel as though everybody's very like afraid of testosterone. Do I have too little? Do I have too much? I mean, there's negative connotations around testosterone and aggression, and they're from both a male standpoint and a female standpoint. Women are like, do I need testosterone? Do I not need testosterone? How much? And so there's just a lot of, I guess, one, confusion about it and misconceptions, and then just a lot of like, hey, what's going on in my body? Is this an issue? Is it not an issue? I just don't really know. Most people feel that way. And I just want to start everything off and preface it by saying you don't really know unless you go and get blood work, right? So everything that we're talking about today in this episode is going to be subjective to you specifically. Like, you don't know until you go get your blood work done and find out where there's deficiencies or things that are suboptimal, or even if it is an issue or not an issue. But there's lots of things that you can do proactively to make sure that you have healthy testosterone levels as a male, as a female. We're primarily going to talk about male testosterone in men today. But I just see, like, I get bombarded. I'm almost 35. I'm only 34 years old. I get bombarded on social media with ads for like TRT all the time. And it's interesting because I'm like, why are they on Facebook and Instagram, when you do advertising campaigns, like, you set an age range. So I'm like, what is the age range that they're targeting for TRT? Because you wouldn't think that somebody that's in their 30s would be an ideal or target market for them. But apparently I am, right? Because Facebook knows how old I am. And I'm getting bombarded with these advertisements. So I guess let's just start off by talking about like what testosterone is. Brandy, you've got 6 pages of notes there.
Well, I don't know if you want to go right to me on explaining testosterone, but I do want to mention, the blood work issue. I think that's really important. And, I wish I would have gone back and had blood work done when I was 18 years old so that I could have a baseline in order to like compare my blood work in my levels now compared to where they were at 18. So I think I encourage people to get their blood work drawn often, use that as a marker to see where you are. And then in terms of there's usually a range for whatever it is you're getting tested
Big range.
on. A huge range. And I think for testosterone, it's like something, a normal range is something around 300 to over 1,000.
Yeah. Big range.
Right. A huge range.
Yeah.
And to that point, I think, so if someone gets their blood work done and they're in the normal range, but maybe it's on the lower end of that, I would still be really, I wouldn't want follow-up work done if I were on the lower end of that or the higher end of that, because the range is based on the average of the American population. And as we know, the American population, instead of getting healthier and healthier over time, is getting sicker and sicker over time. So even though you might be within a normal range for your testosterone, if it's on the lower end or higher end, still do follow-up work on that, because I think what we want to do is optimize and not just, kind of be in the middle.
Well, and you can't look at one thing,
right?
Because it might, most likely it's not an gonad issue or your testes being able to produce testosterone. It could be, right? But a lot of times that's not the issue, and it's other organs that are overproducing or underproducing that are causing a lack of testosterone or free testosterone, or it could be your thyroid, it could be your pituitary gland, it could be your pineal gland, it could be your adrenals. Like, all of these things can impact how much testosterone you either are producing or you have as free testosterone that's available for you to use. And so you can't just look at like, my testosterone's, if it's 300 to 1,000, my testosterone's 600, and is that optimal? Is it not optimal?
Right.
You have to look at these other things and say, okay, like what else is going on there, right? Mm-hmm. Kaden, do you want to take the testosterone question of like what testosterone is in the first place?
It's a hormone, right?
It is a hormone produced in the testes. I'm gonna say, yeah, I'm gonna pass it back to you, Zach.
It's a very complex topic, right? Like anything hormonal is complex, but testosterone is like you said, it's produced in the testes. It's a hormone that we typically think of as like, you're young, you're 12, 13, 14 years old, and you hit puberty and you get a lot of testosterone, and that turns you into a man, basically, is pretty much what happens. And during your teenage years, like testosterone is basically on an uptick and it peaks. And then you typically start losing about 1% decline in testosterone production, like year over year. That's like the average. Right. But testosterone has a lot of functions in your body outside of just sexual function, which is what people think about. One thing that's really important for people to know, that testosterone and libido aren't necessarily the same thing, right? They're linked. But for a male could have super high testosterone. The thing that actually causes libido in men is estrogen, which most people don't think of. I didn't know this up until recently. And I was always like, I was always concerned about all of the environmental factors that were going to increase my estrogen as a man. And I'm like, I don't want any of that, right? So like, I'm going to avoid everything that could possibly create or increase my estrogen levels. But like as a male, you always want higher testosterone and also some estrogen, because that impacts your libido. With women, it's the opposite, right? It's high estrogen levels and then lower testosterone levels, but you still have to have the testosterone, right? So there's, don't have the misconception like I used to of, hey, estrogen's bad, because you need that for libido. And if you don't have enough, your libido will drop. And so testosterone isn't necessarily the same thing as the libido piece, but people think of it that way, right? Yeah. But testosterone, obviously, your muscle mass, really important, right? For For working out and growing skeletal muscle mass, you need testosterone for that. For facial hair, right? You need some testosterone for that, or hair all over your body. Men obviously have more. And testosterone makes effort feel good, right? Where it's like, hey, I'm working really hard towards something. Like testosterone makes that feel good. If you have a lack of testosterone, like you don't want to put forth a lot of effort. It doesn't feel good. It kind of is a bummer, right?
A couple of other things that testosterone helps with too is bone density and then mood regulation. So those are a couple of other big things that it's really important to ensure that you have plenty of that hormone in your body.
Yeah, absolutely. Brandy, I love what you said about like, hey, I wish when I was 18, I would have gone and got tested, and now I could compare versus what it was. Right. Most people, when they're going in to get their blood work done and they're like, hey, my mood's not as good. My energy levels aren't as good. I'm not producing as much muscle mass, or I'm struggling to gain muscle mass. Then they go and get their blood work done. And it's like, yep, this is like, let's put you on TRT. That's risky, right? That's risky because a lot of times, like my testosterone levels, I had my blood work done recently. It's like 600, right? So I'm like right in the middle of the 300 to 1,000 range. But you can't just look at that. You have to look at the free testosterone, your sexual hormone binding globulin, which determines like if you have an overabundance of that, that means that it's grabbing onto your testosterone. So your body, it's not available for your body to use, right? I was told that based off of my blood work, I needed to eat more carbohydrates, which I thought was interesting, but insulin levels impact your testosterone levels.
Right.
High thyroxine, something like that. That's a thyroid hormone, will decrease your testosterone levels. So if your thyroid's not working properly, probably the most important inhibitor would be cortisol, which is you have kind of a hierarchy of hormone creation in your body where you have pregnenolone. And then from pregnenolone, you have DHEA. And then you have either your sex hormones that are created, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, or cortisol, which is your stress hormone. And if you're very stressed, then you will use that DHEA to produce cortisol as opposed to your sex hormones, which can impact your testosterone levels.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up cortisol too, because I think there are things, a lot of times someone will go in, they'll have their blood work drawn, and if they're identified as being low in testosterone, the doctor will want to recommend putting them on a TRT or a therapy to increase their testosterone. But there are things that you can do before going on TRT to try and improve or increase your testosterone naturally. So things like stress management, if you do have high cortisol levels, ensuring you're getting plenty of sleep, making sure that you're eating a healthy, nutritious diet that is full of all of the macronutrients, making sure that you're exercising. So drinking plenty of water, all of those things can help increase your testosterone levels without being on TRT.
Yeah. So Katie, I feel like this is where we bring you into the conversation is the exercise piece that Brandy just mentioned, right? So does exercise impact testosterone?
Yeah, testosterone will actually increase the more that you exercise. It'll end up speeding that process up. Another thing that I guess I kind of want to like talk about as well, just like regarding like the testosterone, talking like on making sure that you're getting consistent sleep, but then like tobacco and alcohol products are like two things that will destroy your testosterone levels, whether that's cigarettes, dipping, vaping, whatever that nicotine tobacco product is. And then one thing that I found interesting was I read that if you drink consistently about 2 drinks a day, your body starts converting those drinks into extra estrogen as well. Just the more consistent you drink. Alcoholic beverages on that, which I thought was kind of cool.
So exercise to increase your testosterone, avoid the other things to, prevent it from decreasing or increasing your amount of estrogen that you have in your body, right? So smoking and drinking alcohol.
I would add to that overly processed foods and high sugar as things that could decrease your testosterone levels.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Aromatase is an enzyme that turns testosterone into estrogen, right? And so everybody, like I previously said, it's like everybody needs estrogen, everybody needs testosterone, male, female, which one's going to be higher, right? But one common issue, especially around like the TRT conversation, is increasing your testosterone just going to increase your estrogen levels because you're producing too much aromatase, which tells your body, hey, take that testosterone, turn it into estrogen, like estrify it, basically. And while that's a necessary function, having increased body fat produces more aromatase in your body. And so that's one of the things that we see commonly with men developing like breast tissue, right? Excess breast tissue is they've got too much aromatase. They're estrifying all of their testosterone. And not only is that like basically bringing down their availability of testosterone, but it's increasing their estrogen, which then now they have a lot of additional issues from. So just increasing your testosterone alone isn't going to fix that problem. You got to lose body fat, right? You'd have to lose body fat. Now there's drugs that you can take to that are aromatase inhibitors, so you won't produce as much, or you'll basically kind of make it dormant in your body. But I mean, a more logical solution here would be like, hey, let's lose some body fat. Let's get our body fat down. But you can't have too little body fat, because then you don't have enough estrogen, and that's going to be a problem too, right? It's interesting from a just like a reproduction standpoint. One thing that we'll see that's the opposite of too much body fat is too little body fat in our industry with bodybuilders and people that are going to compete. They get their body fat percentage way down. With women, right? It gets under 13% body fat, 12%, and they stop getting their period. Right. And it's basically nature's way of saying, like, you're not healthy enough to grow a human being in your body. You don't have enough body fat. So we're going to stop this process. Right. So too much is bad. Too little is bad as well. Right. What about a little bit more about sleep, Brandy? Yeah. So how does sleep impact testosterone? Because there's obvious things that you can do to solve this problem if you feel like, hey, I have low testosterone, right? Yeah. Exercise, like lift weights, right? Strength training is the best for that. Anywhere from 1 to 6 reps of heavy weight, which is motor recruitment. So you're recruiting more neurons. That has the greatest impact on increasing your testosterone levels. What about sleep? Well,
I think sleep impacts all of our hormones. And if we're not getting enough sleep, so when we're sleeping, that's when our body goes into recovery mode. We're able to create and produce those hormones. And if you're not getting enough sleep, then your body isn't in that state to be able to increase those hormone levels, to, grow your hair, to do all of the things that you need your body to do when you're actively recovering through sleep. So if you're not getting enough sleep, then the hormones within the body are not going to be created to the level that they should be created. Your body's just basically surviving and not thriving. So we need to get plenty of sleep, and that's really related to stress as well. I think sometimes the two can go hand in hand. If someone is really stressed, that can impact their sleep. and can also impact, muscle protein synthesis as well. You're not getting enough recovery time to be able to, for the body to go through that process as well to increase muscle mass.
I would also say breathing dysfunction, like sleep apnea, just breathing dysfunction in general, right? Like people that mouth breathe versus nasal breathe tend to have a buildup of carbon dioxide in their bodies versus like healthy levels of oxygen within their blood cells. And that not only reduces testosterone levels, but impacts your ability to sleep and then recover and build testosterone. And so that sleep apnea is a very common thing, especially among people that are overweight, but also people that have any type of breathing dysfunction where maybe they have a deviated septum or something, they can't breathe through their nose, and then they're not breathing properly at night, or they keep waking up because they're holding their breath essentially. And then they wake up because their body's like, yo, you're going to die. So wake up so you can breathe. And that causes a lot of issues as well. So breathing dysfunction's really important. Breath work is such, oxygen is free. Breath work is such an amazing tool that you can use to increase your testosterone naturally, right? So, I mean, all the things, exercise, sleep, breath work, water,
yeah. Nutritious foods,
like, I mean, all things that basically
managing stress.
Managing stress, like
which
all
breathing
things that are
can be
easy.
used to help with that as well. Breathing
right?
tools. Yeah.
Totally. So what would you guys, I know that we have some clients that are on testosterone replacement therapy. We're not their doctor, right? We don't know what their blood work looks like. There's probably a very good reason why they're doing that. I would assume, right? Sometimes you need it. Sometimes you don't need it. There's probably an alternative method that we're talking about here. But like, what would you advise somebody to do if they're, I mean, we already established the blood work part, right? So, so if it's like, hey, I'm not feeling as
well, what are the
optimal,
signs?
right?
So some of the signs that people can look to identify if they may be low in testosterone: fatigue, low libido, weight gain, mood, feeling like their mood has changed,
or up and down,
and down, fluctuations, and mood swings. So I think those are some of the things, and then combine that with, so if you're having those symptoms and the blood work shows that you may be on the lower end, then I think, talk to your doctor, work with your medical team, and see if TRT is a good protocol for you, and start with those other things that are free that we mentioned that you can do, in addition to. I think that's helpful even if you are on TRT. Yeah, I mean,
right, even if you are, and I wouldn't suggest, I mean, again, I'm nobody's doctor, but I wouldn't suggest that if you are going to do some TRT or something similar, I mean, there's different approaches, right? You have to find the issue first, right? Maybe it's not that you need more testosterone, it's that you need less aromatase, or your thyroid isn't functioning properly, or your pancreas isn't producing enough insulin, or it's just a slight dietary change or a supplement that you can take. Something, right? Like, I wouldn't look at TRT as like a long-term solution. There's plenty of cases where you can go in and you take whatever supplement or medication it is that's needed, that there's a deficiency in, and you do it for a very short period of time, anywhere from like 2 weeks to 6 months. And within a short period of time, your body's like, oh, I remember how to produce this now, or I remember what the appropriate amount of this is. Let's go ahead and kick on whatever wasn't functioning properly. And a lot of times that's it, right? You go beyond that, and then you become dependent on it, and your body will rely on that and you will always have to continually seeing your doctor to adjust your amount because you're not getting, now your body needs more and more and more and more. And then that's where we kind of get into a spiral from there. So control the things that you can control, try to address it from as natural process as you can, work out, right? Caden will kick your butt. Caden's just quiet over there now. He's like, yep, Zach, you just take it home. Zach,
you're doing great, Zach. Doing great.
Take it home. But come in, work out, breathe, eat right, get enough sleep, manage your stress, like all of those things. And then once you've done that, then if you need a little extra help, like get some extra help, right? Yeah. There's no issue with that. So, all right, guys, that's all we got for you today. We'll be back next week with more great stuff. Thank you so much for listening to the Healthy Living Scottsdale podcast. Do you have a question that you'd like for us to answer live on the podcast? If so, all you need to do is head over to the Apple Podcast app on your iPhone and do 3 simple things. First, leave us a rating and review telling me what you think of the podcast. In that review, ask anything you want related to health, fitness, or nutrition. And if you want a shout out, leave us your Instagram handle or name. That's all you have to do. Then listen to hear your questions answered live on the next Q&A episode.